Hey folks, in this episode, it's all about getting started in wedding photography. Hey, welcome back to the podcast. I'm here with my good friend, Mr. Troy Miller. Today, we're going to be talking about getting started in the wedding and portrait photography business. What does that look like? What do you need to, and by the way, this conversation presupposes that you have the skill to get into that industry and you're already a good photographer. So we're going to talk about the tools that he as a working professional uses. What are the software processes, post-processing he uses? How does he distribute images to the end client, marketing, all of that stuff? Troy Miller, man, how you doing? Welcome to the show.
I'm good. Thanks for having me, buddy.
I saw you about to take a drink.
I know. I saw you switch the camera. So.
It's like, let me get it on before he gets that drink. But thanks for agreeing to do this. You and I have known each other for a long time.
Yeah.
We've done many recordings together. And as I was putting together this series, I thought you'd be the perfect person to talk to about this stuff. I mean, you are the, I'd argue you're the best wedding photographer that I know. So,
and you know one now.
I know one. No, I know a bunch. Let me rephrase that. You are one of the best wedding photographers I know.
Thank you.
I don't want to make anybody mad and get hate emails. But let's talk about this. So the world of wedding photography, notwithstanding the current pandemic that we're in,
right,
which I know everyone's experiencing sort of a depression, contraction. But when things are normal, what does that look like for you? Like having shot for several decades, what is it a sustainable business? Obviously it is. And how does that look on a sort of weekly, monthly basis?
It is very sustainable. The nice thing is about weddings is that you rarely get cancellations, short of the issue that we're in today. You get postponements, but it's very stable. And I book a year to 2 years out, which I gotta say, from a self-employed business standpoint, is pretty awesome. That I know that 2021 I've got 10 jobs already booked. That helps me financially prepare equipment upgrades, education, marketing. I kind of know what my budget is going into that. So that's really nice.
Yeah. That's amazing. And that's where, conversely, with other photography, like say if you're shooting portraits or something, no one's booking a portrait a year in advance, right? They're like, hey, I need a portrait. Let's call a photographer.
Yeah, not unless there's like some family gathering happening, but those kind of sessions can get postponed very easily. Something comes up, the family, one of the people can't show up, a kid gets a bloody nose or a scratch on the face. Like they just say, well, we'll do it later. Yeah. And that can be really rough. And I'm not a big fan of that. Like I like to know what I have coming up. We do a lot of families because, weddings and couples turn into families. So we do a lot of those. But the weddings are the core of our business.
Well, let's rewind a little bit and get a look at just set the stage for your ability to address this topic, right? So how long have you been shooting? How did you get started in this world of wedding photography and all that? Give us your Spider-Man radioactive spider story.
So my wife bought me a camera. Oh God, so long ago, like 40 some years ago. I got into photography, and then in my pursuit of learning more photography, I ran into some mentors. They trained me in photography. I didn't want to do weddings. I thought, I don't want to deal with people. I want to go out in nature and chase trees and squirrels and sunsets. But I realized very quickly that weddings were amazing. Everybody's in a good mood. It's a really fun place to be. And so I jumped into the wedding world and I decided that I really loved it. And this year is 29 years, I think. So next year, 2021 will be 30 years.
Wow. Congratulations,
Thank
man.
you.
30 years doing one thing.
Yeah.
Like, who could say that?
and this is all my wife and I do. We do this together. There's been no other streams of income. And I think that's sort of important to realize that you have to, if you're going to be successful in any business, as you have to go deep in your knowledge and understand the market in order to be successful, and stay educated, pay attention to what's going on.
Yeah. Well, fast forward to today.
Yes.
So someone's listening to this, they want to be a wedding photographer. Mm-hmm. They may be working a 9 to 5 or, an 8 to 6 or whatever. And they're like,
right.
Okay, when I'm leaving this place. I can't wait to tell my boss to shove it. I've got my spreadsheet, and I've said if I could do either 52 weeks in the year. So if I do a wedding every weekend and charge X dollars, I can make a bucket of money at the end of the year. I'm going in. So you're having that conversation with a photographer that has those aspirations. What would you tell them, as a mentor with 30 years experience in the business?
That's
Run!
That's a big mouthful. Well, my first thing is you can do it. There's a lot of people that look at running their businesses as in photography and think like, I just can't do it. There's not enough market or whatever. And that's not true. You can do it. Just know it's there. But second of all, be patient and go slow. I think what happens in this industry is a lot of photographers, because there are so many other photographers, they come in and they're like, oh, I'm going to be a wedding photographer. So I'm going to look and see what wedding photographers in my area are charging. And my work's not too bad. So I'm going to start there. And that's a huge mistake. Yeah. You need to start where your skill set is, and you need to build a portfolio. So take your time. Give yourself 3 to 5 years to build your business. This isn't really something that you should do overnight if you want it to be sustainable. Because if you do it in a hurry, what you're going to do is you're going to set a sort of a standard or a baseline, if you will, that you're a shoot and burn photographer, where you go in, you shoot, you collect, $800, you hand them, a couple cards or whatever, you ship them to digitally, and then you're out. And then someday you're going to want to be better than that. And that's not what you've established yourself as. So take your time, think about who you want to be, and build that business and give yourself time.
But that's a good question. It's the whole cart before the horse, or, I can't get a job until I have experience, and I can't get experience until I have a job thing that follows us around whenever we start anything new. How do they get over that? A lot of photographers will say, yeah, I'm just going to shoot for free, or I'm going to shoot and burn, until I build up a good portfolio of images to show, and then I'm going to go in and change my prices to X $1,000. What do you say to those people?
Well, I think if you want to learn, wedding photography and photography in general is one of these kind of businesses that I think you need to be mentored. I don't think that you can just go take some college courses, buy a camera kit at Costco and play with it with your kids for a year, and then think, oh, I'm going to be a photographer. I'm going to be a wedding photographer of all things. You really need that mentorship. You really need that sort of apprenticeship, and you need to be able to work in the front lines and have boots on the ground with somebody that can look at you and go, hey, this is how you should do that. And then take those pieces and build that into your own brand. Wedding days are completely different than any other kind of shoot for the most part, for families and even some commercial stuff, is that if something goes wrong, you can reshoot it. But on a wedding day, you don't get a chance to redo it. So those are where the skills and your price points matter. So if somebody at like an $800 price point, you shouldn't be expected to be able to shoot in a tornado, right? But if you're $8,000, you better be able to make amazing images during a tornado, right?
But how does a bride who presumably is green, right? Because who's a professional bride, right? So this is their first wedding, so they don't know. Right. So how do they know what $8,000 is supposed to give me versus what $800 is supposed to give me?
They don't, and that's a really tough thing to have to do, because we as wedding photographers, every time that we get a new client, it's like a new job interview, and we have to be able to, one, in a way that shows sincerity, express to them what our personality is. What, do we get along? Because not all brides are my brides, right? And I'm not all brides photographers. Like, we may not get along. Mm-hmm. And so that's one part of it. But the other part of it is you need to be able to communicate the work that you can deliver. And you do that through your website. You do that through social media. You do that by being able to show them albums and work. And then make sure that you over deliver when you're done. And then reputation, that it's a slow process.
But how do you see that's the scary part of this whole thing? I was listening to some psychology thing the other day. And it was talking about, I forget what the principle or the whatever the thing they were talking about, but basically it was saying that there are people that think their skills are better than what they are. Actually, it was about motorcycle riding. So it was talking about the dangers of riding motorcycles and thinking that you are more, skilled than you actually are,
Right.
and then exceeding that and having an accident. And I was thinking how that relates to, knowing we were going to talk, I was thinking how that relates to portrait and wedding photography. When you have a photographer who thinks they're better than they are, they think their images are amazing when in reality they're marginally above mediocre, right? And then they go out and try to sell themselves and all that. How do you combat that?
It's impossible to combat that. I mean, the way that I look at it is you have to know the market that you're in, and you have to know who your client is. And in my particular area, what's good for me may not be good in another area. If I was to go to LA or Seattle or Hollywood, I might be cheap. Or if I was to move to another area, go to the Midwest, I might be expensive. So there's no baseline that says, oh, this is always good and this is always bad and this is always mediocre and this is always expensive. You really kind of have to know your market. And I know these are kind of like, I'm not really trying to sidestep the answer because there isn't an absolute. But I think first and foremost, I would tell any photographer, any artist is define yourself, define your look, define what your style looks like. And that's not copying somebody else. That's maybe borrowing from other styles, because then your clients that you market to, when they see you, they're going to be like, oh, that Troy guy, like his images are always really saturated and edgy. And I like all that, versus, oh, this other photographer, her stuff is like really dreamy and I love the backlight, and we're different styles. So you have to establish that. And then that's where the quality is. Right. Your ability to deliver that on a regular basis.
When someone says they want that particular Troy Miller style, you're able to deliver that, and repeatedly deliver that if necessary. Well, go ahead.
Oh, and that's what the brides are looking for, right? Like the brides are they're hunting for what they have in their mind's eye, what they want their wedding images to look like. So if a bride comes to me and her in her mind's eye, she's done all this research and she's seen all these like beautiful, softly lit, crazy, elegantly posed images. And then she comes and sees me and you see brides standing on top of a dumpster or something. She might be like, I don't want that. That's perfect, because I want her to find the photographer she wants, and I want the brides that want to do what I want to do to find me.
Yeah. Well, let's talk a little bit about style. Yeah, because there's the whole, and I'm not a wedding photographer, so this may sound dated. So or this is a two-part question. The first part is, what is a style? Because I remember back in the days of Dennis Reggie and those kind of kings of photography back in the day, there was a certain kind of style that went along with what they shot. I mean, they had to shoot with a Hasselblad camera and, sun-packed strobes. And, it was a process, Dean Collins and all that stuff.
Ronnie Zucker and
I know. And then, and then it seems like there was this transition period or a trend, I don't know if it's still here, of photojournalistic weddings. Remember that? Everyone was talking about, I'm a wedding photojournalist.
There's no such thing, I don't think.
Which I took exception with because I'm a real photojournalist. That's different, right? So how does that work? Like, how do you determine the style? Like, or do you just look at other people and like, I'm going to be like Troy. I'm going to start copying his style and put my own stank on it. Like, what do you do?
So style to me is if there were 8 of us photographers lined up and you had a model standing in front of you, and we all photograph the same model in the same situation, all of our images are going to be different. That is your style. So maybe you just really like natural light. Maybe you're not real sophisticated with your lighting, but you're really good at evoking emotion out of somebody. So you focus on that. That's your style. I think, like, for me, I tend to play a lot with my couples. We joke around a lot. I tease a lot. I'm really good at lighting, whether it's natural or artificial or combining the two. So when you look at my images and you see that, that's my style. And then when I edit, I tend to like vibrant colors. I like contrasty imagery. And that's my style. So it's really, how do you see the image? That's your style.
Well, speaking of style, how do you you know, let me rephrase the question. So if you look at the components that go into successful photography, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's technology with the cameras and all that. There's physics that go in there, creativity with the lighting. But I would argue in wedding photography, one of the more important pieces of that is psychology. Right?
Oh yeah,
and being able to empathize and communicate and get expressions and poses and stuff out of the bride and groom, but the entire wedding party. So bringing that back into the context of this conversation, if someone's considering going into wedding photography as a profession, shouldn't their ability to communicate with others be just as important as their ability to create a good photograph?
More so. One, being able to work with other vendors, being able to be creative and deliver your product in time constraints that aren't often what is ideal. You know, I might schedule 45 minutes with the guys and I get 15 minutes. Well, I can't complain about it, right? I can't blame hair and makeup for running late or the limo for not being able to find the location, right? You just got to like do your job, and you've got to do in 15 minutes what you promised to do in 45. And that's the hard part about weddings, is that you need to be able to deliver all the time.
And that's the professional part of it, right? Because they're paying for someone that can move and ebb and flow with the changes on the wedding day.
Right. And you also have to know the wedding day is not about you. And unfortunately, I see this a lot with other vendors, is that, you know, they have this vision of this amazing imagery that they want to create, or a video, or the DJ wants the party to go. And it's never about you. It's always about your couple. And you have to know when you're pushing too hard. You have to know when to stop. There's been many, many times on hot days we're doing the romantic scenics, and the sun is just about perfect, and you look over and you can just see that they're done. Like, you have to walk away from that so that they carry away with that day the memory that the day was awesome, and that the photographer didn't drive them into the ground and exhaust them, you know?
Yeah.
And that happens.
Do you ever find yourself in the position of like taking over the ceremony? I hear that a lot from some wedding photographers, where the wedding planner or whomever is not really doing their job and things aren't flowing. So you have to step up and say, oh, it's time to cut the cake. Okay, time for the first dance, all that stuff. Are you ever that guy?
All the time. But it's in a cooperative kind of way. So before the weddings, we make an effort to reach out to all the other vendors, the DJ specifically, the videographers specifically. And if there's a coordinator, we'll work with the coordinator. And then a lot of facilities have day of coordinators. So we normally create the timeline, because as photographers, we're spending the most time with the couple. And so we have to make sure that everybody gets their time during the day, and then we help them coordinate when the shots are going to be the best. So for us, a lot of it revolves around the romantic scenics. And so oftentimes the couples will come to us and say, okay, what time should we get married? Because we want our romantic scenics to have the best light. And then we build a timeline for them, and then we communicate that to the other vendors. Oftentimes, you know, we'll be at a facility, and you have to be very gentle in how you do that. But if you notice that something's not flowing the way that it should be, if you have the experience, you go, hey, now would be a really good time to cut the cake, because 27 people are outside and they're doing shots, and I think they're not coming back in, you know?
Yeah.
And so through experience, you can read the room, and you can read the attitude of the couples, and you can see what the other vendors are doing. And then you sort of pull together and say, okay, let's get this thing moving, right? This is for the couple and for the attendees. Let's make this fun.
In a lot of ways, the photographer is like the connective tissue of the event, right? Because you got disparate vendors there, and you're the one that's kind of floating around and always with the bride and groom, or at least within earshot, right?
Yep. And we all have to be careful, and I'm guilty of this as well, is that we have to be careful not to be possessive of our time with the couple, because we all have this creative idea of what we want and we want to deliver. And so we have to work together as much as possible. And that, to me, is actually harder than the photography. Is, 80% of my day is coordination. Where am I going to photograph? Oh, that's going to be in my way. Okay, I'm going to talk to the coordinators. That table have to be there. Can we wait for an hour so that I can use this beautiful spot in the shade because it's hot everywhere? Coordinators, no, you can't. Okay, where am I going to go now? Will the priest, will they let me in the church 20 minutes early so I can use the window light? And then I get 5 minutes to do the shots.
Yeah. See, people that are considering going into this industry are like, maybe I'll stay in my cubicle for a while longer. That's a lot of work.
Well, I think it's like anything. I mean, if the day is perfect and the couple is perfect and there's no hiccups, it seems really easy and it flows really well. But that's not usually what happens. And you have to be able to manage chaos all day. That's all we do all day long is manage chaos and try to create art out of that chaos, try to create images.
What percentage of your weddings have gone like perfectly to time, or at least close to it, where, okay, this is going to happen here and this is going to happen there and it's over and we're in the car on the way home, none of them?
1%, less than 1%. And I'll tell you, we schedule, like, for example, with the guys and the girls, but like their wedding party stuff separately, we'll schedule roughly an hour because we know we're going to get a half hour. That's how that works. We set a start time but it's longer than we need because we know that they're going to run late. It's just the way that the day goes.
You build it in. Yeah.
Yeah. And
that's the professional.
And if people show up on time, and if we have all the time that we need to have, we'll oftentimes be sitting off to the side going, did we get that shot? Yeah, we got that shot. Like, how come we feel like we didn't get the shot? Like, because it was so smooth and we weren't rushed. But, recommendation to couples, if you're on time and you're ready and your guys are ready, you're a photographer, you're a videographer, we can create so much more amazing stuff for you. Yeah. And what couples don't realize is I can do 3 or 4 different poses and shots in 5 minutes.
Wow.
So you cut my time by 5 minutes. Those are shots that you'll never see. You don't even know I could have taken those.
See, people need to learn all this stuff. See, this is that 30-year, 10,000 hour thing going on there. I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about just sort of the nuts and bolts of the wedding day. The way you describe it, it sounds a lot like you're going into battle, right?
Oh, yeah.
And managing chaos and, that just sort of things are going off all around you and you are the guy that's just sort of running the football. So give me your A-team montage for getting ready the night before or the day of. What's the suit up look like?
So I have a routine, and I think a routine is super important. I do things exactly the same way every single time, and I won't go through the whole detail, but I lay out a paper towel and another paper towel, and the dead batteries go on the first paper towel. Then I charge them, and then the second batteries go on the second paper towel. All my cameras line up to the left. I pull the batteries out. They line up. Those get charged. I clean everything. I clean the lenses. I clean the sensors. I pretty much empty the bags and then refill the bags, making sure that I have everything from, Advil to Pepto to Imodium AD to sewing kits to Band-Aids, you name it. I refill my kit every single time before a wedding. And we have duplicates and triplicates of everything. So, I've got like 6 flashes and 4 bodies and countless lenses. They're all prepped and ready to go. That's all the night before. Then the night before, the bags are packed, they're assembled, they're put together, and they're lined up in the hallway, ready to go. So if I get up in the morning and, the hot water heater explodes, I'm not panicked about my gear. It's ready to go. It's perfect.
Yeah.
And we have outfits that we wear, and we'll call it a uniform, but really what it is because we're in Southern California and most of our weddings it's warm, is we wear like slacks pants. They're golf pants. They're super thin. They're like a dry wicking. I don't know, like a dry fit. I think Nike calls it a dry fit. Same thing with shirts. I wear a black shirt just like this, and plenty of sunscreen. And I have a summer beanie that I'll wear if it gets really hot.
It's reflective.
It's a very, very thin black beanie, but yeah. And for us that works because we're super casual.
Yeah.
I wear like Nike running shoes so I can climb on rocks and everything like that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's my style, and that works for us, and our clients dig it. So
Now, when you're climbing on those rocks and running around wedding day, what is your personal loadout look like? Are you backpack with a camera on a
oh, okay.
a sling, and what is the wartime Troy Miller look like?
No, I don't like anything on me at all. So I use Spider holster. So I use the Spider holster hand grips and the Spider holster itself. So I have a belt clip that I can put my camera in, and I work with one camera all day. So it's just one camera. So I change lenses 100 times. I use a top load shoulder bag. So I close the top, I pick it up, I walk over to the new location, I lay it down, flip the top open, I can grab stuff right out of the top.
Mm-hmm.
I personally don't like the shoulder bag, the backpacks, because it takes too long for me to get in and out.
Mm-hmm. Even the ones that swing around and allow you to access?
Yeah, and plus my bag weighs like 30 pounds, so I don't want that thing hanging on me all day.
Yeah.
And now, it's fair that that's how I work. I work fast. I move really fast. I change lenses all day long. I never put lens caps on them. If you watch me work, I flip lenses around all the time, and it freaks people out. That's how I work. If you work slower than that and you don't need as much gear as maybe I carry, then don't. I have a couple speed lights in there that I'll hand hold for off camera.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then my wife, she carries another bag very similar to mine. And that's it. No, we don't carry any reflectors. Sometimes I'll have a light stand with a single light on if I have an assistant, but no umbrellas, no light boxes, none of
no silicone light dome modifiers
No.
on the top of your flash.
Oh, no. And for me, and I qualify that because I really don't like it when somebody says, well, this is how you need to work,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I work in aperture priority because it's fast. I let my camera do all the autofocusing because I trust it.
Yeah.
And I want to be able to spend more time with my couple and get more poses and get more emotion than I am worried about, getting the proper edge light or something like that, which they don't need that. They don't need to be distracted with 4 people holding lights all around them. That's not what they hire me for.
Are you setting, like, speaking of camera settings, are you aperture priority, obviously,
Mm-hmm.
but what about ISO? Are you letting it hunt for ISO, or do you pick a specific ISO and go with that, or do you ride that? How does that work?
So because I'm worried about aperture more than anything else. I like shallow depth of field. I want to control, my depth of field and my focus point.
Yep.
I change the ISO all day. So I'm changing the ISO and I'm picking my aperture, and I run that combination all day.
Okay. ISO and aperture. Okay.
Yep.
Very cool. Very cool. See that those are the things that people need and want to know. So when you get to a wedding venue, I'm assuming you and Margie find a spot that you're going to put the gear and camp there.
Yep.
And then you pick and choose out of that depending on what's happening to get ready for the next segment of the event, whether you're going to need a strobe, or you're going to handhold that, or what particular lens. And you're only carrying one body. Do you have a backup in the bag, or how does that work?
I'm only carrying one body. Margie is carrying another body, and then in the truck, or depending on the location, it may be in a roller bag we've hidden behind the DJ, is another complete set. And a backup is not just another camera that can get the job done. It's another one of the same cameras. So it's a D850 or it's a Z7. Mm-hmm. So I have a spare Z7 or D850 sitting in the bag with the same 70-200 and 24-70 and 2 more strobes. Okay. So yeah, that way if somebody walked away with my bag, I've got another bag.
You're good. Yeah, you're not going to lose the wedding and ruin the day. And do you, with that separate bag, you mentioned in the beginning, the night before, you're doing that sort of load out and unpacking and packing. Mm-hmm. Does that one get the same treatment, or is that just a backup bag that's always perfect and ready to go, sealed up?
Every piece of gear that I own gets cleaned and prepped for the wedding day. I see, the wedding day is a one chance opportunity for me to completely screw up. Mm-hmm. I'm going to do everything I can to stack the odds in my favor of having a successful outcome of that day.
That's awesome. That is awesome. All right. So the day's over. Memory cards are filled, successful. You got some shots you didn't know you're going to get. You're excited to go look at them. You get home. What happens to those cards? What happens at that point?
Well, let me just back up to the wedding day stuff. First of all, that camera that has the shots in it never leaves my body, ever. I never hand it to somebody and say, hey, hold this while I'm going to go to the bathroom. It never leaves my person. If I have to change a card, it goes in a card holder in my pocket. It never leaves my person all day.
Is that you just being careful, or is that you've been hurt before and now you got PTSD?
I've never been hurt before. I would like to think it's because of the forethought, preparing. If I stop and have dinner on the way home, all the cards out of the cameras are in my pocket.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So then when I get home, the very first thing that I do is I start uploading those cards. And I have a multi-redundancy system here. So that card gets uploaded to 2 different hard drives. That card then gets labeled. I label it with the wedding, and it goes in my drawer. I will not use that card again until I have verified that either the job is done or all the data that's on the card is actually on the hard drive for sure. I visually verify before I wipe that card.
Wow.
Yeah,
wow.
just to make sure. So then
now, do you wipe the card? I know some photographers that won't wipe the cards even after they ingest them to their hard drives. They'll leave it on the card, leave the data on the cards until the night before the next wedding, and then they zap them.
Yeah,
exactly. Are you the same way?
Yeah, exactly. Okay. But I before I wipe that card, I look at it and I say, oh, okay, this was John and Sherry's wedding. So I go and I look it up, and I'm like, oh, Margie's, we already finished that one, so yeah, I'm safe to wipe it. Or oh, she hasn't edited it yet, so let me just make sure that all the files are there if I needed that card.
Okay.
I have enough cards that I could do 5 weddings and not have to duplicate a card.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Yeah.
Which cards are you using? What's your brand of choice?
I am currently using, I think it's either Sony or what am I using? Sony or Lexar, because I'm shooting with the Z and the D850. They're XQD cards.
Oh, those big ones. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. They're the big guys. So right now I've got a couple of the Sonys. So yeah, these are the Sonys.
Nice.
It's like reflecting.
Yeah, there you go. I see it. Yeah.
Yeah. I usually use the 128s for the Z because the files are so big, and the 64 for the Z6. Do
you rotate those cards so that you're not using the same card over and over again for the weddings? Okay.
Yeah.
So you keep them in kind of on a conveyor belt?
I've probably got 12 of these cards. They're expensive, and it sucks. They
are very expensive. I have a camera that takes those, and I'm like, do I really? We had this conversation.
Yeah.
I'm like, do I really need that? But you need it. Like, why would you need the XQD speed? Because their claim to fame is just robustness of the data and then the write and read speed, right?
I don't need the speed. It's what the camera takes. I wish it took an SD card or a CF card. Like, I don't really care. It takes an XQD card. I don't need it to be fast. They're brides. They don't move that fast. you know? And I can upload in 30 minutes versus 45, or the other way around. Like, I'm not that worried about it. I do appreciate, and I was told by, I don't know who told me, Delkin or somebody I was talking to. They said that these cards are more stable. So your data on the cards are more stable. So I appreciate that. Like, that's good to know,
Yeah. I wish memory cards had a life on them, like a little meter that would tick down over time. It's like, and it gets yellow, it's time to switch it out,
Yeah.
So it's an idea for you guys out there that are making memory cards. Okay. So you're back home, you're in ingest and all that. You mentioned Marjorie's doing the editing of everything, right? Is she doing your post-processing in Lightroom? Are you doing that? How does that piece work?
So she does the culling, and the culling is really sorting out the non-keepers from the keepers. So we'll shoot about 2,500 3,500 images between the two of us. Out of those, we'll come down to 500 to 700 deliverables when it's done. So the first phase is they go into a hard drive. Margie accesses those, and we use Photo Mechanic to do all of our initial color coding and sorting because it's it's super fast.
Yeah.
And then she sorts those down into the folders that I'm going to edit. So that would be color, black and white. Sometimes we'll do sepia, and we do what's called special, which is basically Troy can do whatever he wants to the image, apply a crazy effect or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then
And she's doing all that. She's doing that sort for you, and
yes.
you get to get in and play.
Yeah. And the benefit for her doing that is that in our business, she does all the sales and she does all of the contacts with the bride. So she really has a better sense of, this bride's really going to like the special effects. Like she's really going to like all those edgy tweaks where, this bride may not be so inclined to that. And so she'll edit it a different way. Where I'm more the artist behind her, just creating. And then, she manages the flow of creativity.
That's really cool. That's really cool. See, that's a process, and that's a impressive machine you guys have built together.
Yeah,
so
it's good.
Talk about that a little bit for the people that may be thinking, yeah, maybe my spouse and I will start doing this together. You think that's a good idea for all couples? Some couples need a break from each other. I don't know.
Well, I don't want to use the Q word. We're all on quarantine right now.
Right.
Luckily, after 30 years, we were very patient with each other, and she is extraordinarily patient. You know me personally, so you know that I can be a little intense.
Yes. Yeah.
I would say that it's an amazing blessing to be able to work with your spouse and to be this closely knitted and to be able to share how our business works. I hate doing emails. I hate doing all the business stuff, the accounting, and the tons of follow up that it requires. To me, as an artist, that would just kill me. It's no fun. It's just no fun. And luckily, she does that. So if I didn't have her to do that, I would hire somebody to do that, to separate that.
And that's just good business, right? Knowing what your strengths are and what your weaknesses are and supplementing the weaknesses.
And the same thing goes for if you're going to work with your spouse or you're going to work with somebody that you're really close to, is establish parameters and boundaries. Years ago, I bought her a laptop because I don't like listening to her sit in the office and type while I'm trying to edit. And so I'm like, take that stuff outside. You can go email outside,
That's awesome.
And, you have to just have a lot of tolerance for, hey, Troy doesn't like a lot of noise when he's trying to concentrate. So she bought me noise canceling headphones, and Margie doesn't bother her. And Margie likes to take phone calls and talk with her brides in private. Like she doesn't like to have other people around her to distract her. So she needs to really concentrate. So she goes in the bedroom and closes the door. Well, if I hear her in there talking, I don't go in. I give her space, and that's just that sort of relationship, whether it's a friend or a colleague or a spouse. You just got to have that balance.
Yeah, it's just getting to know people and strengths and weaknesses.
Yep.
We could go on forever because there's a ton more I want to ask. I want to skip over like editing and all that stuff, or just touch on that a little bit. What's your sort of pipeline for getting an image from Marjorie? Marjorie said, edit this one, and you finish it. What does that look like?
I was just trying to count in my head. There's like 4 major programs that I use. There's Photo Mechanic, and that's our sorting. Yep. There's Capture One. That's the workhorse of getting images, editing, getting them out. There's Photoshop when I need to push pixels. And then there's Luminar for doing things like cloud replacements and more of the artistic tweaks. Because they've got some really great presets and styles. I'm not sure what they call them, but there's lots of things in there that gives me ideas. Yeah. So So I those are my 4 basic set of tools that I use the most.
Okay, cool. And then once you're out and you've got a folder of images that are ready to go, where do they go? Do you build albums yourself? Do you send them to a company to assemble and proof for you? How does the actual construction of that piece go?
So what we do is we actually proof all of our images. We print them on 4x6 proof. So,
oh wow,
yeah, we use Miller's Lab, Miller's Imaging, and I know this is very, very unique for most businesses, but I believe that humans are very tactile, and we like to touch and hold things, and so we print them. And then the client comes over, we have these presentation boxes, we have these custom designed bags that we put the boxes in with all of their 500 proofs. Sometimes we'll sit and go through them a little bit. Margie does that. And then they take them, and that's what they get to go home with and look through. Then they sort out their favorites, and then they come back on another appointment and they sit down and they build their wedding album.
Oh, so they build the wedding album with you,
Yep.
not digitally, because a lot of
digitally.
them.
Nope.
So you're actually sitting physically together and saying, "Yeah, on page 1 we want this one. On page 2 we want these 3 as a montage."
Yep.
And you just wow, okay.
Yep. And what we found was over time is that couples they don't know how to tell their wedding day story. Like they hired me to not only capture their day, but in their album to tell their story. So Margie will sit down with them, and it's usually a couple-hour appointment, and she goes from the image on the cover to the last image in the book to, hey, how do you want to tell this story? Oh, maybe we'll put just you guys on this page by yourself, and then over here let's put a couple of the wedding party. Then on this page let's put, this is your family, and like these are your siblings, and then and they tell the story, and then when you're all done, you've told this amazing story that's unique to them. And
have you guys built the idea of what the album could look like before the client arrives, or do you start with a blank slate when they get to the house?
We actually think of that as we're shooting the wedding. So because
like this shot would be great for the double truck in the middle or something like that.
Yeah, and it's funny, so much so that we know we like to put the brides on the left side of the page, looking towards the center, and the groom's on the right side. So we'll actually, and Margie Moore has to remind me because I just get caught up in creating. She'll be like, "Hey, we need a couple of these with with the groom facing to the left because that may be a good double spread in the book." Or like, you know what, we need this. This will go pano. Like if you take this shot, this couple will absolutely for sure put this in because they love silhouettes or sunsets or whatever. Mm-hmm. So let's make sure we get one of those. Like, okay, we'll do that.
See, that's the professionalism coming out right there, because that, looking at how a lot of wedding photographers shoot, they're very competent photographers. They go out in the day, they come back with a bucket of amazing images,
right,
and then they figure out what it's going to look like in the album, and they let the shots that they were able to capture on the day of inform what the final product is going to look like. What you're saying is you guys go in with the mindset of we're shooting for this book and we know what it's going to look like. Let's shoot for the book with the layout in mind, which I think is kind of unique. That's actually really cool.
For the story, we absolutely pre-visualize not only every single image we take, but the overall pose and look, and how it would look in a book or how it would look as a wall portrait, because not everything is gonna work that way. So, if I do a shot of the guys walking down the street with the giant palm trees in the back, I know that that's going to look good in the book big, right? And I also know how I'm going to edit it when I get home. So when I hit that image, and Margie, she knows as well, like, oh, Troy's going to do a special effect on that because the asphalt and the trees, it's going to look killer. So we know way ahead of time.
That is so cool. So you guys have it dialed in.
Yeah, we do. Yeah.
You absolutely have it dialed in. That is really cool. So then, okay, after everything's done, the album's built and it's delivery time of the album. So the album, who's printing the album? Is that coming from Miller's as well? And then what does that delivery from your hands to theirs look like?
So our books there's two kinds of books. You can do what's called like a press book, which is a sort of a one image per page kind of thing, and you can put as many images that you want on there, or a flush mount book. Or there's a matted album, which is very, very traditional, where it's a photograph, the mats are cut, it's inset in the book, in the page, makes the image really stand out. We do mostly matted albums. So there's only two companies. I think it's Leather Craftsman, and I think Zookbinder used to do matted albums for us. I think they're stopping because not a lot of people do those. They're very expensive, and those are more of the high-end books. So those and the flush mount books, those are the two companies that are working with us right now. So Miller's is not doing my albums.
Okay.
One of the reasons that I'm choosing to work with like Zookbinder and Leather Craftsman is these books are hand bound. They're the spines, the wrap, everything is done by hand. They hand pick the leather, they build the spines, they build those. So it's a level of book that I really love. It comes to me, comes to us, we inspect it, make sure it's perfect. And then we call the couple and say, hey, your book is here. Would you like to come over and pick it up? And then
that's it.
Yeah. Then they come over and they pick it up, and then we sit down with them and they flip through it.
With a glass of wine, I presume, or something.
And
like
cookies. Yeah.
And cookies.
Yeah. Margie's cookies. Yeah. It doesn't have to be that way for every wedding photographer, but what we found is the personal service is so important for the experience that having them come back and putting that extra time into it, it really pays off for us in the long run.
And then, as on that delivery day, what's your philosophy around giving the client the digital images, or giving them access to like an online gallery for Facebook and Instagram, et cetera?
So we have two offerings for that. So we offer what we call brag pics, and what those are is they're very small digital files that are perfect for social media. Now, a lot of photographers, their clients will ask them for digital files. But what they don't ever do is establish what does that mean to the client. And for the most part, the client just wants a library of digital files so they can share with the world, right? So what we do is we share brag pics with them, and then they can post those on social media. The digital files, the high-res digital files, are available for purchase after everything else is done.
Okay. So they're kind of an afterthought. You get the album, that's done.
Yep.
Okay. If you want the files for posterity or whatever, you can get them.
Right.
Okay. And does include the raw files, or just high-res JPEGs?
No, high-res JPEGs, edited the way that they were delivered to them. And they can take those if they want. They can go print them if they want. They can do whatever they want. Most of my clients come to me with the intention of me as the artist creating the piece for them. So they want me to build the book. They want me to print the artwork. They want me to do everything for them. So at that point, it's really just them having the files for archive. Mm-hmm. We also create an online gallery that they can link and share files to. And we don't even take orders on there or anything like that. We don't want to take digital orders that way.
Okay. It's merely for just another way to view the album, basically, right?
Yeah, and it's nice for them to be able to share the entire set of images to somebody that's out of state or isn't local, where they can come over to the bride's house and sit down and look through the photos. It's a way to send that link to someone and go, here's my wedding photos.
Yeah, yeah. And it's 2020, right? So you gotta.
Yeah, it's easy.
Use the net.
Yeah, and if anybody wants to buy something from there, the bride just says, here's Margie's text message, or tell her what you want. And that way we keep that personal interaction with every client at every step of the way.
That's great. You guys are like the wedding photography literal mom and pop shop. That's what you guys are.
Because, it's a lot of people don't know what they want. And that's the thing that I kind of feel bad about. Like, if you go and you only have like 2 digital options to order, maybe those aren't the options you want. Or maybe there's 500 digital options, and maybe that's too many for you to choose from. And they'll call Margie and be like, yeah, I just want to give my grandmother a cool gift. And we're like, hey, this is it. Why don't you do this? They're like, I didn't know I could do that. Mm-hmm. Perfect. Another happy customer. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really good. That's really good. High touch and excellent customer service that is behind a stellar 30-year experience product, right? So and all that together is kind of that steep hill that people that want to get into wedding photography, there's different rungs along the way, but getting to that level where it's dialed into that point and you've built a brand and you know what your brand should be, that's kind of the holy grail, right?
It is. And it is extremely difficult to get to that point because it requires experience and hindsight to be able to look at a couple and say, okay, this is how we need to handle these guys, and look at another couple and say, this is what they're going to like, and to be able to decide how I insert myself into that and what I can create for them. I mean, look, dude, there's couples that I'll have climb a tree or stand on something crazy. And then there's other couples I would never ask them that because they're not ready for that. That's experience and time. That's why when we started, I said, you got to mentor, you got to apprentice with somebody to get you started.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Get in the trenches.
Yep.
Cool, man. So if people want to connect with you either through social media or if a bride's watching this and they want to hire you for something, what's the best way to get in touch with Troy Miller?
Imagery Concepts. imageryconcepts.com or Imagery Concepts on Instagram. That's it. That's everything right there.
All roads lead to Imagery Concepts, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool, man. All right. Well, thank you so much for doing this.
Of course.
And I appreciate you being so open and forthcoming about this stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And not holding, your 30 years of secrets tight to the vest.
No, there's no secrets. There's no secrets. Yeah.
That's cool. All right, man. You take care. You stay safe.
All right. Thanks, buddy.
This episode was made possible by our friends at Fujifilm. Make images, share stories, and experience moments at the speed of life with Fujifilm. Thank you for staying home with us.